In the last couple of sections, we talked about UXML files and how they are responsible for your layout structure. We looked how we can find those UXML files in Unity and how we can edit them. By that, we basically had a first glance at this part of our slide here. So now let's move over to this side, to the styling, and see how that works in Unity. For that, let's start with a tiny amount of theory, since not all people are probably having this this notorious web background and have done almost the same stuff basically in CSS. Let's just talk for a couple of minutes about what style sheets actually are and why they are actually useful. So we briefly touched this when we've been in the Unity editor and talked about the UXML attributes. We briefly talked about the thing that you can set styling attributes on the particular elements and give them something that is called inline styling, where you are just setting your styling in the UI Builder, in the inspector, and those things get encoded as attributes on those elements. And we said that basically you could do your whole styling like that. So again, we kind of answered this a little bit, but the question is, what do we need? What else do we actually need? And why is there a distinct system for styling in the web world and also in Unity? This must have a couple of advantages and be actually more useful than just a different form of saving your styles. So again, for the inline styling, the idea was we basically just append all the attributes that we want to set onto one of those elements. So let's say here, let's ignore the tree before this this kind of node here. Let's just say we are looking at those two gray elements. And let's say that the styling that they had were those three properties: width, height, and color. And we basically just append them on the element and save it all together. That was the way we worked in so far with pure UXML files. So to kind of summarize this, how styling is done in UXML is basically you do a separate style for each element and you tell each element what its style is supposed to be. Now that's exactly a thing that is sort of inefficient, because as you already see here with our two gray elements, they're basically having the same style. So it would kind of be nicer to have some other place where we would say, okay, we want a couple of elements that will have this style, those styling rules here. And then we want to have a way to kind of select which elements should get exactly this style without having to repeat it all the time. And that's exactly what style sheets are solving. Like in a nutshell, what they do is they define rule sets that then decide where to apply your styles. And you will see that those rule sets can actually be quite complicated and can be quite powerful, actually, to save you a lot of work if you just had to use everything with inline styles. So the real power that style sheets bring you are basically those rule sets. And let's just look at how this is actually achieved. So let's try to achieve the same thing we did before. We are having our two gray elements and we want to apply those three styling rules to them. And now with USS, what you would do, or with style sheets in general, but in USS it's the same naming convention. What you would introduce is a so-called class. In this case, we could call this class graybox. How do we recognize that it is a class? You do this with this dot before. If you have a dot before a name, this is identifying a class. And now we don't specify those actual styling rules on the elements anymore. We put them kind of in a separate place, which is this class. We kind of save them under this name. And now the only thing that we have to do is to give this class to the elements. And also we could give this class to every other element that we want to have this kind of styling behavior. And now if you think kind of further here, one big advantage that you already can see is now we could then have a different class with other style properties and also give this gray element those other classes. And just like that, you can create all sorts of complicated stylings and save a lot of work as opposed to having to style each element separately. Now, the real power, however, comes from the fact that you can define things like classes. You can also use other identifiers for elements, like one of which is, for example, actual IDs, then element types, things like that. But the real power comes from the fact that you can actually combine those things that are then called selectors and create very complicated rule sets how to reach elements. So you can say, just for a very first example, you can say, take all elements of a class, or get some element by ID, then get all its children, and then get all elements with some class. And like that, you can chain a lot of those selectors together, and basically you have all the freedom and all the power to now select elements and decide what elements get which styles. Now, that is all pretty abstract so far. I absolutely understand that if you have never used that, you're probably still confused. But as soon as we will touch real examples, I'm sure this will be a lot clearer pretty fast.